This is the Daily Technology Pulse podcast. Welcome aboard.
And here we go with episode 1 of the Daily Technology Pulse podcast. I'm Rick from Daily. It is my honor, my privilege, and quite frankly, my job to host the Daily Technology Pulse. Certainly glad that you're joining us today, and we have got a good one for you to start things off. We've got Jason Short from Absolute joining us today to talk about device security. But before we get to all that, I would be remiss if I didn't let you know who Daily is and what we do. Daily, of course, a comprehensive technology solutions provider serving what we call the SLED market, state and local government, and education, higher ed and K-12 in Maryland and Virginia. If you want to find out more about Daily, we invite you to visit our website, www.daly.com. If you've got feedback, ideas, or suggestions for this podcast or for anything else, feel free to drop us an email. You could contact me directly. My email address is ricko@daly.com. That's RICKO@DALY.com. Welcome to the Technology Pulse podcast, Jason. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Rick. Thanks for having me on today.
Oh, we are certainly glad to have you on the Technology Pulse podcast. Tell us a little bit about Absolute, and then tell us a little bit about your role with the company.
Yeah, Absolute has been around for nearly 25 or so years, but really for the last almost 18, we've been a component of the firmware of almost every PC that shipped around the world. And originally that was used primarily by education to track and trace and recover devices. When different departments went out and put together one-to-one programs and raised a lot of money through a bond and handed out $1,200 devices to a bunch of 10-year-olds, they wanted to make sure that they could get those devices back at the end of the year. And Absolute was a critical part of both securing the devices and ensuring that year after year after year, there were sufficient devices available for students. And at Absolute, I'm part of the product management team. I'm VP of Product Management. I've been here for just about 6 years. And really, for the last 6 or so years, we've been going through a major transition, updating our platform, really rebuilding our entire product from scratch. We've also started to enter other markets, especially enterprise and healthcare and financial, which has required us to increase the security level of our product and take quite a different tact on the way that we look at securing devices and some of the use cases we can solve.
Talking about securing devices, I mean, I really do believe that people don't understand what's really entailed when it comes to securing devices, because I know a lot of people, when it comes to device security, they say, oh, I'm fine. I don't open any emails from anybody I don't know. Or if there's an attachment, I always make sure that I try to run it through the Outlook preview first to let me tell if it's got any type of malicious code on it. But that's not really all that's entailed in device security, is it?
You know, you're right. And one of the advantages of having an open platform like Windows or Mac on a device means that that device is capable of doing everything from accounting to remote learning. And in order to be open to all of those capabilities, it has to be open to different types of programs that can do different types of things. And it's really almost impossible to completely secure a device and still have that device able to be used in such a dynamic and flexible way. And so for our customers and for the industry as a whole, I think you can really put device security into a couple of categories. The first being, as you kind of talked about, vulnerability and malware protection, making sure that the end user doesn't do something to click on a link because the device doesn't always know if that link is legitimate or not, or that program that they're downloading is legitimate or not, or the application or the attachment on an email is legitimate. But the other is actually just even the physical security of that device. Is it within an expected geofence? Has it left that geofence, which might indicate that it's been stolen, and based on either the data on that device or the credentials that device natively has in it, that it can now access information that it shouldn't. So there's a lot of things I think that play into both the security of the operating system and the data that's on it, but even the physical device itself is still equally important.
Now, when you talk about geofencing, that's a really interesting concept because your office can be pretty much anywhere. Is there a way for the software to understand exceptions to the rule that it doesn't necessarily shut it down when it leaves the geofence, or is it just a matter of tracking?
So maybe I'll explain a little bit how our geolocation works, and then I'll tell you an interesting story of a customer of ours, a school district in Texas, right at the beginning of the pandemic, who utilized that to actually make some exceptions to their policies. So generally, location for devices is, for the most part, on most devices, is determined by the OS saying, oh, here's my location. So when you pull up Google Maps on your device, it kind of knows relatively where you are when you're looking for the nearest Starbucks. And most of that's usually by IP resolution. However, anytime you're using a VPN or some sort of proxy, all of a sudden that device that is actually potentially in North Carolina may look like it's outside of Seattle because it's connected to a T-Mobile hotspot, which has happened in the past. And so we take a slightly different approach. We do Wi-Fi triangulation. And what that means is we've essentially, when we work with a partner to do this, we have mapped the globe for Wi-Fi spots. And just like you would with satellites, we say, okay, here's for this device, here's all the Wi-Fi networks that can see and the relative strength, and we triangulate its location, which is exceedingly accurate, especially in larger cities. Frankly, in some cases, it's more accurate than GPS because GPS isn't very good at handling altitude. If you've ever been on the 20th floor of a building and you look at your phone, it might think you're within a 10 square block or 20 square block of where you are, but we'll put you right in that building. And so the first part of geolocation is really accurate geo, which is unfortunately not as common as you might hope. It's something that Absolute does very well. And then the second part is fencing. And I mentioned there's a school district in Texas that was previously hit by malware. And so they cut off all connections into that were outside of the United States into their network. Well, when the pandemic started, there was a bunch of families that went to Mexico and they brought their school issued devices with them. And all of a sudden, those kids couldn't connect in. They couldn't get access to their online learning platforms. They couldn't participate in remote learning sessions. And the school, frankly, used our geo to identify the few areas they were in. They made some exceptions in their firewall and were able to allow those students that, in a couple of cases, were actually trapped south of the border because they couldn't come back across for almost 8 or 9 months because travel restrictions, to still continue to participate. But that was only done because they had a really accurate view of where that device was and could reasonably open up the correct port so those kids could access. So being able to really know where that device is to help you make the exception of whether or not this is a compromised device or it's really within a normal habit, because you can look at the history of a device and see its movement history.
You brought up another interesting point when you're talking about Wi-Fi and you're talking about connecting to Wi-Fi, because a lot of people don't understand just how dangerous Wi-Fi can be. And you've heard the horror stories of people that are sitting in a coffee shop and they see the Wi-Fi hotspot that says free Wi-Fi. And they say, oh, well, great, I can get free Wi-Fi. And they're just opening themselves up to all kinds of dangers. I mean, how much have you seen that type of situation?
Quite a bit. The people may have heard the term pineapples. It doesn't even have to be a free Wi-Fi or advertises free Wi-Fi. You could be sitting in a Starbucks and somebody could create a network called Starbucks, and with a slightly stronger antenna, and your device will connect to that pineapple in someone's backpack over connecting to the legitimate Starbucks Wi-Fi because it looks like a stronger signal. And so it really is a dangerous situation in any public forum. And in most cases, those pineapples are trying to do a couple things. They're trying to determine credentials. They're trying to act as a man in the middle. And having a strong always on VPN is frankly critical. For corporate devices, forcing an always on VPN is one of the most important things you can do for remote users. Even end users are coming into the office every day, but happen to bring their laptop with them home on the weekend, or just happen to go out to lunch at some restaurant. So I think it is really critical to have an always-on VPN. And there's a lot of companies out there that support that. Absolute acquired somebody a year ago, and we've added secure access to our overall portfolio that does the same thing. It's a certificate-based, always-on VPN. And regardless of which one you choose, I think it's a critical part of a security posture.
Now, you use the term always on, and I've seen that a lot with a lot of your materials, always on, always there. Can you explain that a little bit more? I mean, is it really always on? Is it really not able to be deleted?
Yeah, great question. So I'll kind of talk about that. I think the big reason for always on, whenever you are dependent on an end user starting an application, like starting VPN, you have to give them enough of a carrot that they turn on VPN every day. And hoping that you're going to be passing them patches over VPN is not enough of a carrot for somebody to always be on VPN. And so I think that's actually the first real challenge is making sure that you either, if it's not an always on tool, that you are providing enough incentive for the end user to take that action. The second part of always on really has to do with application health. And applications, like anything in the operating system, are subject to degradation. They might be compromised because of a conflict with another tool or a patch update. They might be interfered with intentionally by a malicious user, a malicious application. They might be unintentionally broken by the user of the device. But once that application's broken, and especially if it's kind of a client server type of tool for IT, there's no way to fix it. There's no watcher of the watchers. And Absolute, because of our position in the firmware and our really spending 15 years or so healing our own agent against somebody who has physical access to that device, somebody has complete admin access because they've reimaged it, we still had to maintain the health of our own agent, and we've extended that to cover critical security tools. Generally, those tools are kind of in big categories, UEM type tools, unified device management tools, VPN tools, endpoint protection tools, DLP tools, filters. We've really tried to extend that application monitoring, health and support, and automated remediation to cover the primary tools that IT and security departments use to secure devices, because always on is critical. As soon as that gets turned off, you're just basically unlocking the door to that machine.
So what you're really offering is peace of mind to organizations, because like you said, you're taking it out of the hands of the end user, and you're really allowing the organization level to have that assurance that this is something that isn't going to be missed. It's not something that the end user is going to forget to turn on or is going to turn off accidentally.
All of us that work in security are in it because we get a lot of job satisfaction out of fighting legitimate bad guys. And the entire industry, and I have respect for every developer, product manager, systems engineer at every single IT and security company out there, whether they're a competitor to us or not. We are all really fighting for keeping our customers' devices safe. And I have complete respect for all of them for that purpose. But we all have to find our components within that larger ecosystem. And to have a strong defense, you really have to have a layered set of security. And that's something that people have preached for as long as I've been in security, which is well over 15 years now, that you have to have a layered security approach. And Absolute tries to fit a couple of very specific niches. Number one, as you said, we want to provide peace of mind. When companies make big investments in tools, we're there to make sure those tools are functioning and healthy. Before Absolute, I worked at an AV vendor, and we used to spend tens of millions of dollars every year trying to eke out that'll just 0.1% better effectiveness on some head-to-head competition of who can detect the most signatures. Meanwhile, in any environment, 12 to 18% of devices have a broken AV on them. And so we, as Absolute, are going after the bigger problem, which is making sure that the investments people are making in those tools are really providing that protection. And then lastly is frankly just a safety net. If you have a position in the firmware that can allow you to rebuild kind of from that place of trust, to rebuild your own client, reestablish communication, provide really an unbreakable tether to that device, then what you do have is a safety net. So no matter what happens, you can overcome and deal with it. Could be ransomware. It could be just a broken set of clients. It could be a stolen device. You just need that safety net of an unbreakable tether to that device to handle the situation.
Device security is just, there are so many different aspects to it. And it really seems like Absolute has bolstered your offering so that you're really touching on all of those points.
It's really been a big push for us as a company to say, we have this really unique position in the firmware. Mostly it's been used initially to solve one use case, which is track and recovery of devices. But given that unbreakable tether, what are the most important things, the most important use cases that we could help solve for customers? Whether that's a NIST compliant remote data wipe, regardless of where that device is, being able to provide a NIST compliant NIST 800-88 for those who pay attention to those things, compliance certificate, so that if a device goes missing and it may have data on it, you can ensure that that data has been wiped. And because of our position in the firmware, we reestablish that connection, and we can let you know if any of those files have been accessed between the time that the incident happened and the time that you were able to secure the data. So you know exactly the extent of the potential damage or risk. But one of the next questions is, well, what was on that device? Well, we added a data classification tool. So you can scan that device and understand, does it have student records on it? Does it have social security numbers on it? Does it have financial information, HIPAA information that not only do you have the peace of mind to be able to wipe that device, you have full telemetry on how risky was that device. And there isn't a question when it comes to auditors or comes to your customers has that data been compromised? And then, as I mentioned before, we also added over the last few years the capability of monitoring the health of other applications. That really started, as most things do. I'm in product management. The best thing that we do is steal ideas from our customers who have serious asks, because you know that means that there's a big need and you're not just out there guessing. And it was customers that first came to us who had other tools that were falling down and not communicating, asking us to do professional services engagements to try to make their applications as robust as our own. And that's how application persistence came to be. And we've just grown it and productized it, and it's just part of our standard offering, our standard resilience offering. But that's, again, an area that we've just kind of built out of trying to solve critical use cases. And lastly, just about a year ago, Absolute acquired a company called NetMotion, which provides resilient VPN, resilient connection. We call that secure access now as we've gone through some of the rebranding. But that's the next level. You have to have a resilient network. You have to have a secure network connection because very few things are just device centric. Almost everything involves some sort of that device connecting to some sort of asset, whether that's a remote learning system, a student management system, a corporate financial system. Everything involves some sort of connection. And we want to make sure that not only have we secured the device, but we've secured the communication between that device and every organizational asset that device touches.
And that reporting part of it that you were talking about before, the compliance and the reporting, I mean, that's really critical. Everything from government workers to educational systems, because you've got to have that paper trail. You've got to know all of that information. So you are giving organizations a way to have that. They can show their compliance. They can also deal with situations as they arise and know exactly what they're dealing with.
I mean, you're right in not just a legal climate that we live in, but just in general, proving that you've done something is almost important as being able to have done it. And if you just send out some device wipe, but you don't get the confirmation and proof that it's happened, did you really do it? The audit trail and proof, frankly, is as important as the action. And as you mentioned earlier, that's part of the peace of mind. It's not just peace of mind that those devices are there, but it's peace of mind when an incident happens and you've taken care of it, that you have validation that you've taken care of it, that you can close the book on that file or on that incident and know that there isn't something else that's going to come out and bite you.
Well, Jason, this has been a great conversation. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Aside from having defense in depth and having a layered security approach, I think that the biggest thing that I would encourage everyone to do is not be shy with their vendors on telling them what their issues are and what they're looking to get solved. Our goal is to create products that solve our customers' problems. And the more that you openly share what some of those issues are, the better products you're going to get out of Absolute or out of anybody. So I would love to just encourage everyone to keep those lines of communication with your vendors open. Be good partners with your vendors, and they'll be great partners to you.
That's really something that we try to do here at Daily as well. So it's good to know that we have such like-minded vendor partners.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jason, for telling us all about Absolute and your device security solutions. And we want to thank you for tuning in to today's Technology Pulse podcast. We certainly hope you enjoyed the information that we provided. Be sure to subscribe so that you can listen into future episodes where we talk about industry trends, all the great technology solutions Daily and our partners have to offer, and a whole lot more. Have to get some legal stuff out of the way. The Technology Pulse podcast is produced by Daily. All rights are reserved, and no portion of this podcast can be used or rebroadcast without the expressed written consent of Daily Computers, Inc. Thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. This is Rick from Daily saying so long.